Welcome to Vegan Freak Radio. It's Monday, November 21st, and we have an extra special podcast interview with Karen Davis of United Poultry Concerns.
When I walk into the store, they're selling chickens by the score. They eat dead birds just ain't for me. And I don't eat roast beef or fish, and pork and pig is not my dish. Go ahead and let your chickens free. Chicken orders for Purdue wants to keep those chickens to you. I don't take orders from Colonel Sanders to you. And I don't want to eat no hands, not even every now and then. I just want to let all the little chickens be.
Hey freaks, welcome to Vegan Freak Radio. Podcasting without pants from home, here's Bob and Jenna.
So hello and welcome. That's right. As Jenna said, we've got Karen Davis come up this week. Karen Davis is the president of United Poultry Concerns, and this is a pretty jam-packed interview, huh?
Yeah, we did a little over an hour, and she talked pretty much the whole time. So.
A little over an hour?
Okay, 74 minutes to be exact, because that's how long our mini disc is.
It was quite a bit over an hour, actually. But it was an amazing interview, and we were really pleased to have Karen on. And for those of you out there that aren't quite vegan, we want you to listen to this one especially closely if you're feeling like you might be tempted this holiday season to go and have a little bit of turkey.
Yeah, and because I've heard from a lot of people who are getting frustrated because people always say Happy Turkey Day.
Happy Turkey Day.
And let me tell you, it's not so happy for the turkeys.
Absolutely not.
It's Unhappy Turkey Day.
It's very unhappy Turkey Day for the turkeys. They really get the short end of the stick here. And, people always talk about it being hard to go vegan. I'm transitioning into veganism. It's very difficult, all this other stuff. Holidays are always a difficult time. But in general, going vegan isn't all that bad, And this is the time of year that you should really think about veganism, because this is the time of year that so many animals are killed just as a centerpiece. And, lots of people don't even like turkey. Yeah,
and that makes it extra sad. And I think if you keep in your mind the things that Karen Davis is going to talk about while you're deciding about what to eat this week, it really helps you to make the decision. For me, when I think about how cruel we are to animals and everything, it really helps me solidify my veganism.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It can be really it's just sad when you think about it and you stop and look at it and see what's going on. So yeah. This is the interview to listen to if you're on the border, if you're kind of wavering, if you're thinking you might have some turkey, if you just want to give in to make life easy and things like that. You should really listen to what Karen has to say about the lives of turkeys, about the kind of animals that turkeys are, and just the horrible things that they go through in order to come to the dinner table.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about chickens and about her organization as well. So if you're, of course, already vegan, there's plenty of stuff that you're going to enjoy hearing.
Oh yeah, we're always going out for the vegans, man.
Of course, that's what we're all about. And she's got a lot of really good stuff to say, I should say.
Yeah, she does. She's amazing, actually. So we didn't really get much of a word in edgewise. I mean, Karen, we got 3 or 4 questions off, and then after that, Karen just kind of took off, But it's good. I mean, in some interviews that's a problem. But with Karen, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
at
I didn't
all.
even want to interrupt her because she was just saying some excellent things. So.
I didn't either. We would have gone longer, but we ran out of mini discs. We use a mini disc to record the interviews, and mini discs that we have are 74 minutes long. And at 74 minutes, it shut off. So we went as far as we could with Karen, and it's just jam packed. She just hits it hard. So. Yep.
So I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, we really do.
And go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say we're going to be back after Thanksgiving with our another usual podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be back normal bad time, normal bad channel.
Yep. on Vegan Freak Radio.
Here on Vegan Freak Radio, where we are every Monday. And I don't know.
We hope you all do have a good Thanksgiving. If
that is all possible. For those of you that are
possible.
in the U.S.
Yes, of course.
Because we've got a lot of international listeners who could care less about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so think of all of us on Thursday, which is the holiday, but I'm just happy because we have a week off.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty stoked about that, actually. I'm really stoked to have a week off, in all truth.
So, but, well, I guess we should just get to it.
Yeah, so here's the interview with Karen. We'll let it roll. Enjoy. Have a good time. And as always, if you have feedback for Karen or feedback on our shows, let us know. Stop by the forums. And don't forget, the show is 100% listener supported, and little hits to the tip jar always help. So if you want to stop by our site and drop some money in the tip jar, we really appreciate that. Thank you all so much for listening, and here's an interview with Karen. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Vegan Freak Radio. Today we have an extra special treat for you. We're fortunate enough to be joined by Karen Davis, PhD. Karen Davis is the founder and president of United Poultry Concerns Incorporated. She has a PhD in English from the University of Maryland, College Park, where she taught for 12 years in the English department. Her articles have appeared in the Faculty Voice, University of Maryland, Journal of English and Germanic Philology, English Language Notes, Teaching English in the Two-Year College, Between the Species, a Journal of Ethics, and many other publications. She has published in the New York Times, The New Yorker, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, Columbus Dispatch, Cleveland Plain Dealer, this is a long list, Harper's Magazine, Atlantic Monthly, Nation, Baltimore Sun, Los Angeles Times, Dear Abby, Egg Industry, Feedstuffs, and has appeared on The Howard Stern Show. Karen has essays in Animals and Women, Feminist Theoretical Explorations, Terrorists or Freedom Fighters, Reflections on the Liberation of Animals, and Animal Liberation Philosophy and Policy Studies Journal, Volume Number 2. At the University of Maryland, Karen founded the Animal Rights Coalition in 1989, and she pioneered a course on the role of animals in the Western philosophic and literary tradition in the University Honors Program. Karen is a featured speaker at the annual National Animal Rights Conventions in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. On July 2, 2002, Karen was inducted into the U.S. Animal Rights Hall of Fame for outstanding contributions to animal liberation. Karen is the author of A Home for Henny, A Home for Henny, Instead of Chicken, Instead of Turkey, A Poultryless Poultry Potpourri, Prison Chickens, Poisoned Eggs, An Inside Look at the Modern Poultry Industry, and More Than a Meal, The Turkey in History, Myth, Ritual, and Reality. Karen's latest book is The Holocaust and the Handmaid's Tale, A Case for Comparing Atrocities. It's our great pleasure to have Karen.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you can make some time for us. I know you're very busy.
Well, I just came in from cleaning up a chicken house.
Excellent.
We just took in 44 new chickens, so
wow.
They've added to the population.
Wonderful. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about how those chickens came to United Poultry Concerns?
Sure. These birds were among the 270 or more who were found apparently abandoned, in a parking lot in Brooklyn. I don't know how many people are aware of the very traditionalist, rigidly Orthodox ceremony called Kippurit, which is part of Yom Kippur. It's not officially recognized. It's a medieval type of ceremony where the practitioners gather up chickens. In the case of Brooklyn, New York, and Los Angeles and other places, the birds will often sit in crates and cages for days, up to a week or more, without food, water, or any kind of care at all. And then when the ceremony commences, the practitioner swings the chicken over his or her head and projects his or her sins into the chicken, symbolically, and then has a chant that says something to the effect, now my sins pass into this chicken that I might live a long and happy life. And after that, the chicken is slaughtered. It's a horrible ritual, and our organization 100% opposes it. And of course, the attitude on the part of the practitioners towards the birds is, without any compassion for them at all. And so these birds just happen to be part of that, and to have been discovered in a Brooklyn parking lot. And so the people who found them took them in and euthanized those who couldn't be rehabilitated, and then looked for homes for the remaining birds. And we took in 44 of them. So they're young hens. They're all female birds. They're the type of chicken that people call chicken. They were, baby birds, young so-called broiler chickens, young, heavyweight birds. And so they're out in the yard right now with our turkey Florence, who's been with us since since January of 2000. She was rescued from a slaughterhouse in Baltimore. And our 4 rescued male ducks, 2 of whom came from Hudson Valley in upstate New York, the infamous foie gras firm. And then we have other chickens from various sources, including both the chicken industry, that is the meat type industry, and the egg industry. So they're all out there having a good time. We also took in some chickens from in the spring from upstate New York, 2 sets of chickens who were abandoned by teachers following school hatching projects, which we also strongly oppose, and have literature that we make available to teachers and other educators urging that they do alternative kinds of learning experiences about birds instead of hatching baby birds in the classroom and then discarding them after the little project is over with.
Wow, so you just took in 44, and so how many birds in total do you have there?
Well, now we have 140 birds altogether.
Wow, that's amazing. So I think most of our audience probably knows something about United Poultry Concerns, but maybe to get us moving a little bit, can you maybe tell those of us in our audience that don't know a lot about UPC, a little bit about yourself and maybe about the kind of work that UPC does? I mean, we just got a little sampling of it, but what other kinds of things does your group do?
Sure, Bob. Well, let's see. I started United Poultry Concerns in October 1990. That is, in October of 1990, United Poultry Concerns became an officially designated nonprofit organization that addresses the treatment of chickens, turkeys, ducks, and other domesticated fowl in the areas of food production, science, education, entertainment, and human companionship situations. And we promote the compassionate and respectful treatment of chickens and other domesticated fowl. And that also includes, well, our main focus is on chickens, and chickens particularly as they are used in the meat and egg industry. Obviously, this is the largest use of chickens, not only in this country but worldwide. We're talking about something like 25 million chickens being slaughtered every day in the U.S. alone, and close to 10 billion chickens, and when you take into account all the federally inspected slaughter plants and all the state inspected and all the live poultry markets, and well over 50 billion worldwide. So when I started United Poultry Concerns in 1990, it was interesting that even some people within our movement at the time were telling me in the late 1980s that if I was going to start an organization on behalf of farmed animals, which was kind of discouraged at that time. You know, people are never going to pay any attention to farmed animals, it was said, and of all the farm animals, chickens are the least likely to elicit any feelings of concern or compassion on the part of the majority of the public. And my response to that was, well, all the more reason to start an organization dedicated to improving the knowledge that people have of them, and hopefully to try to improve the quality of their lives in this human society that owns and exploits them. So, contrary to the advice I was given back in those days, I did start United Poultry Concerns. And one of the things I discovered almost immediately when I sent out a call for essays from people who had chickens, who knew chickens, who had feelings for chickens. I did this through a variety of outlets that were available then in the animal advocacy movement. And I got a wonderful group of essays from people in Canada and throughout the United States, writing beautifully about their love for their chickens, how their grandmothers had loved chickens, stories of chickens who had been through horrible ordeals and yet managed to show joy in life and to recover rather amazingly. And so the idea that you still sometimes hear, although nothing like back in those days, that, well, you're never going to get people to care about chickens. I thought then that was a very negative, foregone conclusionist attitude that would only be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I have happily lived to see the time when, compared to back then, there's a great deal of attention being given to chickens and turkeys and now ducks. Other groups are picking up on the ground work that United Poultry Concerns laid, in which I insisted upon who they are when they're not being exploited. I've contributed a tremendous amount of knowledge to our movement as well as the general public about where chickens come from, which happens to be the jungles of Southeast Asia, the kinds of lives chickens live there, and which their wild relatives continue to live. The kind of, when you know more about the animal that you're dealing with, what their evolutionary background is, what kinds of things they normally would do during the day, what they eat, and so on. And then you have a better grasp of the kind of suffering that's imposed upon them when all of those resources that were their birthright and their earthright have been stripped from them, and they are raised in dark, filthy, miserable, excrement-filled buildings. And I was also interested, and still am, in providing details beyond saying, well, they're treated cruelly, well, it's inhumane. I wanted to do the delving into the literature, which I continue to do, the poultry literature, and really be able to make the case based on facts, based on detailed information. And certainly there's no better place to go to make your case for how badly farmed animals are treated, the diseases they suffer from as a result of how they're raised and treated in factory farming, than to go to the animal agriculture literature, magazines like Feedstuffs or Egg Industry or Poultry USA, and to go to the U.S. Department of Agriculture meetings that I go to. You just pick up a wealth of information, and again, the industry makes our case for us. So those were some of the things that I started out wanting United Poultry Concerns to accomplish. I started in 1990. I put out our first issue of Poultry Press, which at that time was black and white and just a folded 11 by 17 sheet of paper into 4 parts. And I used to run off the copies myself at the photocopier of what was then the Washington, D.C. Anti-Vivisection Society office downtown near Capitol Hill. And I don't know if you heard, but we were recently, in fact, in the present issue of Utne Magazine's November-December publication, United Poultry Concerns quarterly publication Poultry Press was chosen among hundreds of newsletters that they get in all the time as one of the 10 best. And it wasn't just one of the 10 best animal publications. We were the only animal publication that was chosen out of all of the publications that they receive on a huge variety of subjects. So, we started out strong, and we've evolved to where, I feel very, very pleased and proud of the work that we have been able to do, the publications we've been able to put forth for people, and the fact that we have earned the respect of what you might call people outside the movement as well as within the movement. Certainly, I should mention the fact that, for example, one of the best things that happened for United Poultry Concerns happened in 1999, shortly after I moved our whole operation from outside the Washington, D.C. area to the lower eastern shore of Virginia, where we're still located. And this is a huge poultry-producing area. Well, when people say, what's the use of trying to get the attention of the media? It's useless. They're never going to pay attention, and if they do, they'll only ridicule us. Again, another one of these negative attitudes that really ends up creating the situation that you're predicting. And I always think it's one of the biggest mistakes ever to assume that the news media is monolithically opposed to us, and it's not true. And when you approach the media that way, then you end up getting what you asked for, and of course it only hurts animals. But to get back to what happened with the Washington Post, we had put out a news release that we would be, again, for the 3rd or 4th year at the White House Easter egg roll, passing out literature with our posters and so on, and educating the thousands of people there with their children about how hens are really treated by the egg industry. And we didn't get any media attention at that time. Only about a month later, I got a call from a journalist, Tamara Jones, from the Washington Post, saying that she had seen this news release a month or 6 weeks ago and was interested in doing a story about United Poultry Concerns. And she came down here, that we're about 3.5 hours from the Washington Beltway, and she interviewed me, and she met the birds, and one thing led to another, and she went to a conference at which I was a speaker in Virginia Beach. And she ended up doing a huge profile of United Poultry Concerns called For the Birds in the Sunday Style section, which is Sunday is the most read day of the Washington Post and most newspapers. And this article was very, very informative, very detailed in the information. In other words, the information that I gave to her about how chickens and turkeys and ducks are slaughtered, how they're raised, the feelings that I expressed about the birds, much of my background and how I came to be to become so interested in the treatment of animals, going back to my work in civil rights in the 1960s and growing up under the shadow of the then atom bomb and all of that, I really tied those things together, and it ended up a terrific article, 3 full pages, wonderful photographs of me with my chickens, and the article won for that year the Arc Trust Genesis Award for Best Newspaper Coverage on an animal issue, representing the issue in a positive and enlightening way.
So you've been defying expectations all along, huh?
Well, yeah, I think you have to defy expectations, especially when the expectations are negative and assuming the worst. And when I say that, Bob, I by no means mean to suggest that I'm what you would call optimistic about things. I am fully aware, painfully aware, of what chickens and other birds, and really certainly just to narrow our discussion to farmed animals, we could expand to all animals, but I will be just say this, that regarding farmed animals, who constitute the largest number of abused animals on the earth, and the largest majority of those being chickens, and to expand that category, all birds in general, who are considered food, consumables, I certainly I look at the worldwide picture, and I do a lot of reading outside the industry and movement literature as well. So I have a pretty good sense of the terrible future that these birds face, as well as the terrible present. And really, when you look into the history of poultry production and family farms and so on, there's a kind of romantic view in our movement and amongst other people who would like to believe that, that there was a time when animals were treated humanely on the farm and all that. And really, the more you look into that, the more you see that that wasn't true in our culture or any other culture. Certainly in my book, More Than a Meal, The Turkey in History, Myth, Ritual, and Reality, I address the full-scale assault upon the turkey that the Europeans commenced to commit when they came to this country in the 16th and 17th century. But at the same time, the idea that Native Americans lived benignly with animals, including turkeys, really is a myth. It doesn't have anything to do with how turkeys were actually treated by Native Americans. And I say this only to point out that my reading, my knowledge, my experience shows that we're looking at a huge human attitude problem and behavior problem when it comes to our treatment as a species of the members of other species. I don't think there was ever a golden age when humans really lived benignly with anybody they could take advantage of, except in those rare cases where you pull out somebody and make a friend of them while you mistreat everybody else in that category. And when people suggest that, well, animals can be treated humanely, my response to that is, well, for one thing, like you talk about humane slaughter, well, okay, if these methods of slaughtering animals, like cutting their throats, subjecting them to electricity, and then partially slitting their throats and so on is so humane, given the fact that they have virtually the same physiology, the same pain receptors and everything that humans do, and that includes chickens, why don't we want to be slaughtered or killed or euthanized that way, if it's so humane? And then, animals it's not just metaphorical, although it is also metaphorical, but it isn't only metaphorical, and a figure of speech to say that non-human animals are the slaves of human beings. Mm-hmm. They are literally the slaves of human beings. They are treated as property. They are owned. And when we look at the history of human slavery, just to, let's say, confine ourselves to the treatment of the Europeans and the white Americans of black people, African Americans, people who became African Americans, the history of slavery was horrible. It wasn't humane. The situation is inimical to compassion and respect for those who you exploit, who have no legal recourse. And one of the reasons why rights, I think, is important, and by rights I mean recognizing claims that other living beings have upon us, upon our mercy and our sense of justice and acts of justice and so on. I think nobody who claims that rights don't matter, legal rights, would give up a single right that they have to protect themselves against those who are stronger and who would take advantage of them. So again, you get into a lot of romantic ways of talking, but when you look down at the hardcore facts, anybody who thinks that animals' rights are not important should just be asked, well, how many of your rights are you willing to give up and just be at the mercy of whoever wants to do what they want to do with you? They're the only thing between you and them is the law. And then the fact is that that those beings who have rights conferred upon them, that is, encoded into law, which is the only thing that's going to make rights meaningful, they actually have more respect. Rights not only protect the weaker against the strong, but they actually confer a status on the right holders, so that they are, because they are recognized as deserving of rights, are treated with greater respect. So there are many reasons why rights for non-humans are absolutely critical. I am not optimistic about rights for non-human beings anytime in the next millennium, if ever, for lots of reasons. My general approach is that we should do everything we can to try to educate people, try to accomplish the goals that we have, that we believe are right, which includes conferring rights upon non-humans encoded through legal channels. I think we should work for all of those things. I think we should work on as many fronts as we can, because you said, well, a minute ago you said United Poultry Concerns has defied expectations. Well, you never know. You never know what your work and persistence in demanding the things that you want for those you speak for might lead to. I mean, certainly I've seen the day come when now battery-caged hens are receiving a huge amount of attention through other organizations working, and United Poultry Concerns working with these groups. And, I see positive change occurring, again, with things that are literally signs of the exploitation that, sadly, in terms of the numbers of animals and the real conditions under which they live, it can only be. Again, we're looking at degrees of less less inhumaneness. I never like to talk about battery cages are inhumane and we should try to make them more humane. Well, they can't be made more humane because they're totally inhumane to begin with. So I think in terms of making things less inhumane for those who cannot escape the systems we've imposed upon them, even as we work for getting them out of those systems and hopefully creating an attitude in human beings whereby human beings no longer wish to enslave other animals, but to allow other animals to live their lives and raise their families and occupy those places on the earth that they have a right to occupy, as much as we have our right to occupy a certain amount, but certainly not the entire extent of the planet.
One of our listeners named Gary, who I think he told me he met you at one point. It kind of ties into what you were just talking about. Gary was kind of curious, what kinds of things can activists do to avoid burning out? Because you talked about how you think in this millennium, animal liberation or any kind of real recognition of animal rights is a difficulty. But how do you continue fighting and forging ahead when we all have that recognition that what we're essentially fighting for is a very long way off in the distance?
Well, first of all, let me direct anybody who's interested in that question to the fact that on our website, under the section Thinking Like a Chicken, I have an article called Avoiding Burnout. How does one survive dealing day after day with a cruel industry? And we also have that this article available. It's really a two-sided, how I deal with the situation, sheet that we make available to people in print form, as well as their ability to simply download it and print it out from our site. And in it, I talked about how, I remembered way back in the mid-'80s when I became involved in the animal advocacy movement. I really got involved around 1983. And my friend Norman Phelps of the Fund for Animals, he didn't work for the Fund for Animals then, but for many years thereafter he did. He's written some wonderful books on religion and spirituality and animal rights and so on. He said to me 10 years ago when I started this, we were talking about hunting. He and I actually met on a hunt sabotage in McKee Gusher's, I don't know what you call it, like a wildlife preserve in Maryland outside Washington, D.C. And so hunting was sport hunting was what got him into the movement. And so one night he and I and some other people were seated at dinner, and he said to me, 10 years ago when I started this, I thought we would end sport hunting in no time. He said, I thought reason would prevail. It was so obvious. And I say this at the beginning of my essay on burnout. And I also give another example where in 1994, Peter Singer, who wrote Animal Liberation and other books, said that when the animal advocacy movement was, in its incipiency, shortly after the book he wrote, which kind of launched the modern movement, he said, quote, my expectations, that is back in the 70s, ranged all the way from having mass support for goals such as getting rid of factory farming, which seems to me absolutely indefensible, but that hasn't come. So, and that was in a book called Speaking Out for Animals that came out in 2001, edited by Kim Stallwood. Well, okay, we're looking at the fact that we started out thinking, it's so obvious, it's so reasonable, it's so morally right that we treat animals abominably, and all we need to do is educate people, present them with the facts, show them how badly chickens, for example, are treated by the poultry industry, how horribly turkeys are forced to live, and so on, and tell them about what the slaughter practice actually consists of, and tell them how wonderful vegetarian food is, and how vivisection is saving their children's lives. Tell them all this, and they'll see that this is so, and they won't want to support these industries and these institutionalized cruelties anymore. But once you get down and dirty, once you get into the real struggle, you begin to find that you are up against human nature. You're up against attitudes and behaviors that are very adamantine and difficult to overcome, and it's just not an easy thing. So at some point, you're not going to get what you wanted the way you might have thought when you started out all fairly dewy-eyed and full of energy when you were in your 20s, You do this for 10 years, you do it for 15 or 20 or even longer, and then, you begin to realize really what you're up against, what animals are up against. So then I guess many people get to the point where the question is it worth continuing, or they just get tired physically, mentally, emotionally. You decide you're going to have a demonstration, for example, and you're going to stand outside a store that sells fur, or you're going to stand outside a slaughterhouse, or whatever it may be. And you go through all the effort of trying to line people up to be there with you, and you make your placards and your signs and have your brochures, and you notify the media, and you do all this work up, usually you and one or two other people, or maybe just you by yourself. And then you get there, and only one or two other people show up. And when that happens over and over again, people understandably get discouraged. Most demonstrations are held on a Saturday, sometimes Sundays, and most advocates have other jobs that they have to support themselves. And so then suddenly, it's just, or they start a group, and then a local group, and the numbers just gradually kind of fade away. And so, and of course, those people apparently burned out, and the person who's describing how they burned out is saying how everybody else burned out, and that's why they burned out. So here, so I go by some mottos and thoughts that put them out for what they're worth. First of all, I said in my essay on burnout that I was very affected a number of years ago when the magazine, The Animals Agenda, was still being published, and it used to have wonderful interviews with everybody from Alice Walker to Farley Moa to, well, in this case, Coleman McCarthy, who for years was kind of the token peacenik on the Washington Post. He is anti-war, anti-violence, and pro-peace, and he taught and still teaches, I believe, at American University. He teaches peace studies, and his dedication to peace and his world view and philosophy encompass animals, animal rights, and he's a vegetarian, and so on. And so, in the interview that was conducted with him, he said, the question was raised by the interviewer. Do you think that with all that we're up against, do you think we're ever going to win? And Coleman McCarthy said, yeah, you're right. We are up against so much, and we're up against ancient traditions, we're up against customs, we're up against people's appetites, we're up against a million things. He said, but my response to that is, don't worry about being successful, just be faithful. And what he meant by that was, of course we want to succeed, and we want to work to succeed. But if we're only working for immediate goals and success, then probably we are going to burn out, because we may work as hard as could be for, let's say, chickens and still fail, because the forces arrayed against chickens and against us and all of our arguments are simply stronger as far as the world goes. But faithfulness is a different thing. If you're not faithful, you will not be successful. And it's not about having faith, it's about keeping faith. Keeping faith is the one thing that we can all do and must do if we're going to forge ahead, and on behalf of animals and animal rights. And again, we have to ask ourselves, okay, we have to face the reality principle. These are the facts. The question is, what is our response to these facts? We can quit, we can burn out, we can say, I give up, or we can keep fighting. In my case, I mean, I don't even want to suggest for a minute that I am every day feeling like, charging ahead, although I do also live by something else I read once, that William Faulkner was reputed to have said. He said, I only write when I get inspired, and I get inspired every day, which I really like. Yeah. Because the point is, if you wait to get inspired, you'll never do anything. You have to make yourself inspired. You have to get up and start writing whether you feel inspired every day. That was what he was saying. I only write when I'm inspired, and I get inspired every day.
That's brilliant.
You have to generate yourself. You have to get, it's like you sit down with a blank piece of paper and you have to write an article, or you want to write a letter to the editor or something. And you can't even think of what you're going to begin to say or how you're going to formulate it or anything. And I go through this all the time. That's why I almost dread every time I sit down to write a letter to the editor, because I know in most cases, I can never just toss off a letter to the editor. I have to spend sometimes hours on it, and then in many times it's not published anyway. So, but the thing is, as you start to sit down, you've got the computer in front of you, you've got the screen, or you've got the piece of paper, whatever, and somehow when you focus your attention fully on this project, thoughts and ideas and ways of expressing those thoughts and ideas begin to come forth. And that's what you have to do. You have to decide what you want to do with your life. You can quit, and things are just going to go on, and you can go turn to other things. But I just feel that that's not what I want to do. I couldn't do it almost. It's one of these commitments that both you have to recommit yourself every day, but at the same time, it's a commitment that's kind of happened to you, and that you have to honor as best you can, as long as you have the energy and the fortitude to keep going. But you have a lot to do with the amount of energy and fortitude that you have to keep going. I remember years ago when I was in the still teaching English and working on my PhD back in the early 80s. In the English department at the University of Maryland in College Park, and pinned up on the wall in the English department was a statement by somebody whose name I've since seen, but I still can't remember now who it was, some revolutionary in Italy or somewhere. And it said, "Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will." Mm-hmm. And I really like that too, because what that says to me is pessimism of the intellect. You face the facts, and the facts aren't promising. They're not all unpromising, but essentially you have to, don't go in with romantic expectations. Have reasonably high expectations and know what your goals are, but don't live in a dream world. Don't live in a world of illusion. But optimism of the will, that's again where it's like when you don't feel like having to go out there and leaflet on the street corner. But it's showtime. It's like what actors talk about, Mm-hmm. No matter whether you feel like crap or not, you have to go out on the stage. It's showtime. You have to put yourself into a mode of readiness to put on your best act, your best show, whatever. And actually the energy comes to you when you take that attitude and when you do that. So you've got to optimism of the will suggests that takes those specific examples and kind of applies to a condition, a mental condition that you put yourself into, that, no matter how you feel or how depressed you are, once, when a reporter calls you, or I'm talking to you on the phone right now, or, I've got to meet with somebody and discuss the fate of chickens and what I'd like to see happen or whatever, you've got to just do your best. You've got to decide. Okay, I mean these birds, these animals, they're all as far as what they have to, their only hope in relation to the human species is pathetically the members of the human species, that small number, hopefully that will grow, that will speak up for the animals and be their voice and be their presence and be their vicarious representative. And so when you picture their eyes and you picture the conditions that they're living in as we speak on the phone right now, it's so overwhelming, it's so horrible, but how can you abandon them?
Absolutely.
Sure.
That quote by
how can you... Huh?
That quote that you raise is a great one. I think it's by Antonio Gramsci, who he spent some time in prison for his convictions, so he knows what he's speaking of.
Yeah.
We only have about 20 minutes left, and I was hoping that we could maybe spin the conversation for a second away from activism and back to the question of turkeys and Thanksgiving, because in the U.S. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I thought maybe you could educate some of our listeners on some of the things that the turkeys go through. So maybe you could talk briefly about kind of how turkeys are in the wild, and then how they've kind of been beaten into domestication over the years.
Yeah, well, this gets back to my point that when you know more, when you really learn about who turkeys are in the wild, who they were, and then you compare that with the miserable conditions that they're forced to live in now to become a food source. One of the most interesting things I learned about turkeys in researching my book, More Than a Meal, The Turkey in History, Myth, Ritual, and Reality, is that one of the reasons wild turkeys were virtually exterminated by the beginning of the 20th century was that turkeys were friendly and curious. They would walk up to settlers, so-called settlers, and various army troops and so on, and they were just, I guess, fatally curious and interested. They'd sit on fence posts of homesteads and so on, and almost invariably, the farmers or the army troops or whoever they might have been, they would go get their muskets and shoot them all. And we hear the term turkey shoot, for example. A live turkey shoot refers literally to, we hear a turkey shoot used politically. It was just a turkey shoot, like blowing all those Iraqis away, right? Just a turkey shoot. It's like we have our bombs overhead and they're down on the ground scrambling around, so we drop our bombs, and that's a turkey shoot. And political administrators and so on use that term. But what it goes back to is turkeys at night go up into the trees. Turkeys are, when it gets to be dusk, they want to go up in the trees as high as they can, and when the early Europeans first encountered turkeys, the turkeys would be in the trees for over a mile. There would just be turkeys everywhere. Well, what they would do is they would shoot them out of the trees just for sport. And they just let them fall out of the trees. And they would describe it with great gusto. Like Theodore Roosevelt, his brother wrote this big long letter that I quote in its entirety in More Than a Meal, where he's just talking about what great sport we had, and how the turkeys would run under the wagon wheels and we'd just shoot them, and how stupid they were that they would finally give up and let you shoot them out. They would be exhausted, and they would make fun of how stupid they were and all that. Well, of course, one of the things that interested me and led me to research and write More Than a Meal was that I was interested in, well, why are turkeys denigrated? For example, every year at Thanksgiving, in the lead up to Thanksgiving, you have all the sarcastic media attention given to turkeys. Their sex life is made fun of, and their swollen bodies are made fun of, and there's this mean-spirited foreplay that leads up to the actual consumption of the sacrificial bird on Thanksgiving Day. And I was interested in where the term turkey came from and how the word evolved to become a term of derision, kind of anthropomorphized term of derision, like a flop or a failure. There are various speculations about, how the turkey came to be a metaphor for a flop or a failure. One suggestion is that one of the earliest uses of the word turkey in that regard in print was back in I guess it was the very early 20th century, where a failed Broadway show was referred to as a turkey. And so it seemed, based on the reading that I did, that there was something about particularly the way male turkeys would, the way they strut, if you've ever seen them in mating season, how they puff their chests out and the snoot, that fleshy appendage that grows down in front of their face, it gets real long and it gets very red and it gets very swollen, and of course it obviously looks like something, like another phallus almost, and so, I think partly that was why the turkey, and gobbling and everything. I think that, to many people, this is just a very humorous sight, which also is a kind of satire, almost unintended by the turkey, but a kind of satire on, men strutting and showing off their stuff and all of that. And so, and of course, it was believed by many, but certainly not all, that there was, turkeys were basically stupid. Well, again, a lot of this idea of how stupid they were came from the idea that, eventually when you would chase them down, they would give up and let themselves be shot, or they were considered stupid because they were stupid enough to walk up to settlers or to a campfire and express their curiosity, and for that they were regarded as stupid, like they asked for it. It's like the victim asked to be shot. After all, they walked up to me. What do you expect me to do? And it's amazing the extent to which these attitudes exist and have existed for millennia and continue to exist, and I've always been interested too in how, animals who will walk into a slaughter plant, they're called stupid because they'll walk into a slaughter plant, like a sheep led to the slaughter. And yet when I was doing a great deal of reading and writing on ostriches and emus, the same characterization of these poor birds, ostriches and emus, was used because they wouldn't walk into the slaughterhouse. They're so stupid they won't even walk into the truck. So here again, you've seen a will in humans. No matter what the animal is doing in the turkey or whatever, it doesn't matter. If we have a will to denigrate and be sarcastic towards them and want to use them in a destructive way, then we characterize our victims in ways that suggest they deserve to be treated that way, even if it's in the opposite of the way they were called stupid and undeserving in another situation. But anyway, it's interesting that turkeys covered the entire continent, except in the very coldest regions like Alaska and upper New York State and some parts of Canada. Turkeys were all over the country. They were in North America and including New England and South America. What became the southwestern United States. They were in Central America, and of course, I guess we don't have time to go into this, but if people order my book, they can certainly learn all about it and read how how the Native Americans in various parts of the continent would hunt turkeys and roast turkeys, and there's a whole encounter there by Cortez and his men in Mexico, and seeing how the Indians, in their huge markets, the Aztecs had turkeys all over the place, and so on. So again, turkeys were used, and many turkeys were used also by Native Americans in ritual strangulation ceremonies and live burial ceremonies and all kinds of things. It just happens to seem that when the Europeans came, they just really, the numbers of Europeans, and just there was no restraint on what the Europeans did. In any case, turkeys, when you read about turkeys have a wonderful, beautiful dance that has been described, where they will just do this dance like on a snow-covered hill for the joy of it. And it's been described beautifully. Ostriches and emus have also been described as doing these beautiful dances for just the joy of doing the dance. Turkeys, for example, can swim if need be. They can fly over a mile over a pond or a lake. They are so versatile in what they do, what they like to do. They have very strong legs, and they actually spend more of their time running and walking than they do flying, but they can fly heavily, but they can fly well. Of course, modern turkeys raised for meat can't fly. It's not they don't want to. They would also like to go up into the trees, but they can't because they've been bred to be too heavy.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to talk a little bit more about how turkeys in factory farms are being treated and how they're raised in comparison to what they're
sure.
like. Yeah.
Well, first of all, turkeys raised for food. They're raised by the hundreds or the thousands in extremely crowded buildings. They are never permitted to go outside. I mean, there are some alternative methods now that are being used, tiny niche markets where the turkeys are allowed to go out occasionally, and they're almost always debeaked, no matter what kinds of systems they're raised in, because turkeys aren't intended by nature. They didn't evolve to live close together, jostled together. And if you've ever been bitten by a turkey, you know that is a painful bite. I learned that when I worked at Farm Sanctuary in the 1980s. I mean, and turkeys get moody,
Sure.
And you see, in nature, turkeys can run away from each other. Chickens run away from each other. They go up into the trees. That's part of how they evolved. They evolved to run away from each other if things get too testy. But what do when they're all locked up and they're wall to wall and they can't get away from each other and there's nothing for them to do all day? There are no activities. I just briefly described how turkeys are very active throughout the day. Turkey mothers spend close to 6 months with their young, teaching them all kinds of things. And turkeys have an active, varied life in the wild. Well, all of that activity and those inborn behavior patterns that define them as turkeys are still in them. It's just that they have no opportunity to exercise these impulses and these interests and activities that they would otherwise do. Mm-hmm. So they're locked up in their own excrement. I mean, that's one thing that people should understand. Has never been in the history of the world such concentrations of excrement as human beings, particularly from the 20th century till now and on into the future, obviously, have concentrated by putting, let's say, chickens or turkeys or pigs into single buildings where the birds and the pigs, in the case of pigs, really know their bodies primarily as sources of excrement. And when I say that, I mean that they're not only excreting constantly and can't get away from it, but excrement is used as part of their feed ingredients, and when the manure is being decomposed by the bacteria that are always active, in decomposing manure, which is a beneficent thing in nature, in these crowded, filthy buildings with their buildup of droppings, manure, and heavy metals and everything else, the manure becomes a noxious gas. That is, it becomes a concentrated nitrogen product that we know as ammonia fumes. So these birds are living in ammonia fumes. Ammonia fumes cause all kinds of problems. They destroy the cilia in the respiratory system, which causes the birds, every time they take a breath, they're breathing in bacteria, viruses, and so on, and they have no natural defense between themselves and what's they're breathing in. And of course, these concentrated environments where you've got wall-to-wall animals, they are just loaded with invisible, with microorganisms. So you've got that. You've got the fact that the turkey industry and chicken industry point out to themselves when they're talking within their own literature and at their own conferences that ammonia fumes are one of the primary causes of immune system breakdown in the birds and pigs. They can't. The ammonia fumes get into their bloodstream and affect their immune systems. There's no way you can exaggerate. There's no way you can exaggerate the appalling, atrocious conditions in which animals, the majority of animals being raised for food, including turkeys, chickens, ducks, pigs, we don't even hear much about pheasants and quails and all of them. They're raised in conditions that have no counterpart in the non-human natural world. They're all living in their own excrement. Many animals go to slaughter blind from the ammonia fumes, and the industry calls it ammonia burn, but it's actually keratoconjunctivitis. It's a type of extremely painful burning away of the cornea. Turkeys, because they're bred to grow so fast in such a short amount of time, they are susceptible to massive heart attacks. So are chickens. So many of the birds have massive congestive heart failure. In some ways, they're the lucky ones before they even get to the slaughter plant. Their hearts and their lungs and their metabolic system can't cope with the demand for oxygen that these rapidly growing body parts are demanding in order to stay alive. And so you've got the same basic heart and you've got the same basic cardiopulmonary system that a normal turkey would have. And these turkeys are, first of all, they're getting no natural exercise. And when we know that when you don't get any exercise, your blood isn't circulating properly, and you're extremely stressed, and one little thing can panic you to the point where you just have a massive heart attack. And then if your body is simply demanding too much of what your heart and lung, more than what your heart and lung can supply, then you have a heart attack. So one of the things that we have given to animals who we have taken from the wild and locked up in these stinking prisons is we've given them heart attacks. Chickens in the wild don't have heart attacks. Turkeys don't have heart attacks. This is something. This is where these animals become reflections of human pathologies. Where I talk about in more than a meal, but I also talk about it in my new book, The Holocaust and the Handmaid's Tale, a case for comparing atrocities. That when you talk about anthropomorphism, nothing is more in the negative sense anthropomorphic than the way that we have forced these animals to reflect our desires and our craziness, that they have been impregnated with human impulses in the forms and human desires in the form of dysfunctional bodies. They are forced to reflect us. They're forced to reflect us by producing all this manure, and I'm always fascinated how, like, environmentalists and others will blame chickens and turkeys for producing all this manure, like it's their fault. They chose to be desecrating the earth with all this manure and so forth. But they are forced to reflect human behavior. And again, it's one of the cruelest things to blame them for having us impregnate them with our own dysfunctional mentalities, and not take any responsibility ourselves for what we're doing to them. And of course, I want to say one other thing about turkeys too. Since the 1930s, turkeys have not been able to or permitted to reproduce naturally. And we have a really good brochure called Turkeys, which people can actually download from our website, which is I'll give at the end of the discussion here. We have a whole section on turkeys, chickens, battery hens, everything, with a huge amount of information all referenced. But our brochure, which is available in print as well as on our website, has a picture that I got at a conference a few years ago of a chicken, actually, but it's what happens to all turkeys in order to reproduce them, with vials put up the vent of the turkey, the vagina of the turkey, who has a vial put up her vagina that has come from the male turkeys, the toms, who are raised in a totally different building, and men actually milk and massage, and what they masturbate the turkeys, and then they squeeze them until the semen comes out into a vial, and then they put what they call semen extender into it, which is a bluish mess of antibiotics and stuff, and then they run it over to the turkey hens, or maybe they freeze it and use it later, and then men tie these female birds down, just as they tied the males down, to stick this male turkey semen into them. This has been demonstrated over and over to be what's not only pornographic, but it's been shown to be a major cause of a death in turkeys used for breeding, because what happens is their chest muscles are so stressed by this, because they're so huge and heavy, so much huger and heavier than a turkey in nature, and their hearts are so stressed that their blood vessels strangulate in their chests, and they have heart attacks and die. And so every turkey is conceived in violence. That's one of the points I want to make. If people are disgusted by what they consider to be the excessive pornography of our culture and violence in our culture, let's look at how the turkey comes to be on the Thanksgiving table. It is the opposite of wholesomeness. It's the absolute opposite.
Absolutely.
The turkeys are conceived in human violence and human obscenity. And that's where every one of these poor birds comes from. And then that's their trip through the concentration camp, the total imprisonment in excrement, miserable food, no joy of life, stripped of all joy and comfort. And then in the slaughter plants, hung upside down, subjected to pulsating electrical shocks that are deliberately designed only to paralyze them, not to render them dead or even unconscious, just to paralyze them so that, number one, they'll stay still through the slaughter process instead of flapping their wings violently, and number two, and most importantly, to paralyze the muscles of their feather follicles so their feathers will come out more easily. I mean, everything about the whole industry is so ugly, it is so cruel, it is so opposite of anything that is wholesome or anything else, that it would be it's a joke almost. It's just that when you imagine what it feels like, what it must feel like to be one of these birds in this condition that can make no sense to their nature. And when people say to me, oh, well, they're just a chicken or a turkey, they don't suffer as much as a human being would under those circumstances, my response is, in many ways that we can't even imagine, they suffer worse than we would or do, because there is nothing in their nature that can make sense out of the conditions that we are imposing upon them. And these are not just conditions in a neutral sense. These are inimical conditions. These are conditions that are horrible from beginning to end. These are conditions that no turkey, no chicken ever dreamed of creating for themselves. So they suffer worse than we do.
Right. And we have some listeners that I think aren't quite vegan yet, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there about egg production, and they don't think it's quite as cruel maybe as meat production because, there's not the same sense that the death's involved. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's the animal care certified eggs and everything. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that kind of misconception and how, egg laying hens are treated?
And could you maybe also... I'm sorry. Huh? Could you maybe also talk about the issue of free range and organic? Because I think a lot of people hear the kind of information that you're telling us, think, well, I'll just eat free range or organic, and they think that's fine.
Okay. Well, first of all, Bob, we have a very good brochure which is on our site, free range, and it's also available in print form that we will be glad to send to people. In which we explained that free range, so-called free range and organic, do not guarantee that any birds, I'm going to restrict myself to birds right now, hens used for egg production get outside at all. And in fact, now with the avian flu scam, which I'm going to call it right now, going on worldwide, there's a bigger effort than ever on the part of the westernized poultry industries to insist that birds who might under certain conditions be allowed to go outside, not be allowed to go outside. They're claiming that, if they're outside, they're going to be more susceptible to avian flu because they're going to be in contact with wild waterfowls, droppings, and so forth, although the opposite has also been asserted, whereby, and I just wrote about this in my new article on the avian flu, where a Canadian health officer said that, on the contrary, the intensely farmed birds tend to be genetically very similar, and the methods of farming result in them being actually more frail and more vulnerable to diseases, particularly since there are so many of them in such a small volume of space. Anytime you have a group of individuals in a small volume of space, you're going to have a disease buildup. I mean, that's biology, so there's no way of getting around that. And I'm sort of going backward here. The idea is this: if you're going to mass produce animals, or you're going to mass produce any other kind of product, you're looking to cut corners as much as you can. You want to put as little into the product and get as much out of the product as you possibly can. So, for example, when we're talking about so-called free range, the producers still want to crowd as many birds, hens, let's talk about confine ourselves to egg production. They still want to confine, let's say, 20,000 hens in a building and allow them to each hen have a maximum of 1.5 square foot of floor space. The hens are almost always debeaked. They come from the hatchery, and they are debeaked at the hatchery, sometimes twice. The free range situation, which is really usually an indoor situation, and the same is usually true of so-called organic, which organic only refers to feed. It really doesn't have anything to do with husbandry, although organic producers may include husbandry in considerations. But you're always going to have crowding. You cannot have mass consumption without mass production methods. So anybody who thinks differently, again, drop the blinders from your eyes and face the facts. At the end of the life of a battery caged hen, which is how virtually 99% of hens in this country and over 75 to 80% of hens worldwide are forced to live. They're living in little wire cages. There may be 7 or 8 chickens with each the amount of floor space, or really cage space, no more than, it used to be standard 48 square inches, and now the industry is talking about going up to, 52 square inches or something like that. Well, you can imagine the amount of space that is for a whole chicken, 48 square inches or 52 or even 56 or even 86. There's no room for them to do anything. They're standing on wire. Very bad for their feet and legs, causes all kinds of foot and leg infirmities and problems. Their nails grow very, very long because they're not outside scratching in the soil as nature intended. Therefore, their nails grow very long and can curl around the cage floor, and they become trapped, and they cannot reach the food and water. And of course, when the chicken catchers come to get them, grab them out of the cages at the end of the laying season or the laying period, they just grab them out of the cages as fast as they can. So in many cases, the legs are just left behind. So are wings. So are in some cases heads. And since, like dairy cows, since hens used for egg production are not bred specifically for meat, they don't have a lot of muscle tissue on them, and they've lived such lengthy lives because, again, when you're thinking about meat-type animals, their lives are shorter. In the case of chickens raised for meat, they're only living 6 weeks in miserable, filthy, horrible, wretched conditions, but they're slaughtered at the end of 6, maximum 7 weeks if they're called roasters, maybe 9 or 10 weeks. But a hen used for egg production, she doesn't even start to lay eggs until she's about 6 months old. So she's living in this house, and of course, even though broiler chicken houses and turkey houses are only cleaned out once a year at most, and maybe not even once a year, consider that a hen in a battery cage, in a world of cages, in a universe of cages, in a 400-foot-long building, they're going to be there for a year or two, and that place is never cleaned out. And so their droppings are coming down through the wires, crusting through the wires. You'll see chickens, as of course many people are now seeing in the undercover investigations that have so splendidly been done by Compassion Over Killing, the Washington, D.C. group, Mercy for Animals in Columbus, Ohio, and other groups have gone in and gotten some terrific footage. Wegmans up in Rochester, New York was the subject of a wonderful undercover investigation recently by Citizens for Compassion or something like that. Anyway, we sell all these videos, by the way. Anybody can look at them and see for themselves. Like the chickens in the battery cages, for example, they might stick their head through the wires or the bars, and then they can never get their head back out again. And so there they slowly die that way. They slowly die with their heads between the bars. And we have some powerful footage in our video called The Dignity, Beauty, and Abuse of Chickens, where we show a hen whose eyes are wide open as she's just dying by degrees in this horrible condition. She got her head caught between 2 bars, and she can never get it out again. And that's common. That isn't just, an isolated incident. The industry is always liking to say, like, slaveholders always like to say, and like the military and the administration says about Abu Ghraib, so everything's just an isolated incident. Well, there's so many isolated incidents that it constitutes a standard operating procedure, and that's or standard pattern of what happens to the victims in all these cases. And so the life of a hen in a battery cage, I'd say that it doesn't get any worse. I mean, the hens are, first of all, these are foraging birds. They're intended to be out running around, as our birds in our sanctuary are doing right now, scratching the earth for microorganisms and grass, and chickens are big greens eaters. They love grass. They love all kinds of greens. They love all kinds of bugs and stuff. They should be out there. They should be living a vigorous life, and they should be sunbathing and dust bathing in the afternoon, which is part of how the rhythm of their biology is in conformity with the rhythm of the day and the light time, the light and the sunlight and so on. And here they are in this sort of semi-darkness with a fluorescent light burning. The fluorescent light is kept burning because this is a primary reason that the birds lay such an unnatural number of eggs. You take a hen in nature, a chicken hen, she's going to lay maybe 12 or 24 eggs a year. And these chickens in the battery conditions, as well as in the so-called free range and organic, are forced to lay about 250 eggs a year. Try to imagine what kind of a burden that puts upon the body of the bird. This is one reason why these birds, as we've seen many times at our sanctuary, are very susceptible to reproductive tumors. The demand upon their reproductive system is just too much. Anybody who thinks that hens, again, who are used for egg production, are somehow treated better than the animals who are used for meat production, I already mentioned the fact that, first of all, the chickens who are used for egg production, like the cows who are used for dairy production. First of all, they all go to slaughter if they live long enough. Secondly, because they were not specifically bred for meat production, they travel longer, many more miles to slaughter plants. Because they're considered virtually worthless. Their bodies are worn out. They're going to go, in the case of dairy cows, they're going to be turned into hamburger meat, which totally disguises tumors and everything else. In the case of hens used for egg production, their flesh is going to be ground up. It's going to be served in diced up form in things like, all the food service operations like jails, nursing homes, school lunch programs. They're always presented in a form where, they're little pieces, so you don't even see what you're eating. Or chicken soups, for example, Campbell soup. I mean, every time I see these disgusting Campbell soups advertisements on television, good and all that. These hens, I mean, their bodies were so abused, and the way they were slaughtered. Again, they might have traveled 1,000 miles into Canada with missing body parts. They're hung upside down. There's all kinds of ways they chop their heads off, or they slit their throats, or where they're dropped into scalding water, live or dead. This is also true of chickens who are raised for meat. That this is a big issue that's been brought out more recently. How many birds are thrown into the scald tanks alive, with their eyes popping out and everything else. But anybody who is under the mistaken impression that if hens are used for egg production, that somehow they're treated more humanely, or that they're not slaughtered, needs to completely divest themselves of that illusion. First of all, since time immemorial, you slaughter your animals. If you're on a farm, you slaughter your animals. You don't keep them around when they're. The idea is you're not going to spend money feeding animals who are not going to represent a return on your investment. That's not just factory farming. That's farming. You hear about spring chickens. Well, that's the rooster who you slaughter after 6 months, or the young spring chicken. You slaughter these chickens and you eat them. What are you going to do with what's a normal farmer going to do feeding a large number of roosters? They're not going to do it. They never did. So, and dairy cows, what are you going to do with these cows? Well, you've got a beef industry. You've got these cows who are born. Well, you're going to use them for dairy products, and then their babies are all going to be. What are you going to do with them? Well, you might use some of them for a lot of them. Most of them actually go on to be slaughtered for what's called bob veal, standard veal, babies muscle tissue or beef, and then a number of them, a few thousand every year, go into the confinement stalls and become for 16 weeks or so, and 14 to 16 weeks, and become what's called baby veal or soft white veal. But what I'm saying is this: and I bring up veal is very apposite, because all animals who are raised for meat are basically veal calves. That is, the idea is you crowd them together and you want their flesh to be as soft and unused as possible. Remember that a muscle tissue, which is what meat is muscles motion. That's what muscles are. They're designed to act. They're designed to be in motion. So since time immemorial, and this goes way, way back, the idea has been in farming that you want to keep animals who are going to use for meat, you want to keep them sedentary. That's another reason to crowd them. If they're crowded, they can't move. You want to keep them sedentary. You want them to just become soft, very soft muscles, not like the muscles of animals who are racing around and outside, and their muscles become very tough because those muscles are being used. In the case of hens used for egg production, well, you want to get the largest volume of eggs as possible within a given building, within a given cage. So you crowd the birds as much as you can together. You lose more individuals, but the volume overall of eggs and the volume overall of flesh is still greater to the extent that you crowd the animals together. And that's also true of milk. So we need to understand that there's nothing about humaneness at all, except when the rhetoric is, to shut people up in these industries. And these industries, it isn't true that, well, it's only when these big corporations took over farming that things became bad. When you understand the realities and you read the truth, if you read my book, Prison Chickens, Poisoned Eggs, an Inside Look at the Modern Industry, you will see that, for example, the modern chicken industry is rooted in chicken farming. Tyson was a vegetable fruit farmer who raised a few chickens. And when the Depression came, started trucking the chickens to the big metropolitan areas, chiefly Chicago. Frank Perdue, he was a chicken farmer on the Eastern Shore. The Bee King, that started in San Diego among farmers. Starving birds, hens used for egg production in the practice known as forced molting. These are all rooted in traditional farming. So people need to be clear on the fact that farming was never benign or humane, or the farmer was never looking at animals as, any more than the slaveholder was looking at the human slave as, well, we need to do everything to make their lives as nice as possible. In fact, if you read the human slavery literature, you'll see that they made the same argument. Why treat a slave? Why waste money on medicine when it's cheaper to just get a new one?
Absolutely.
And if that's exactly the attitude in farming, why waste your time on you certainly don't waste your time on individuals. I mean, there's no profitability in that. So, go ahead.
I just want to. I'm sorry to cut in, but if we don't draw this to a close pretty soon, we're going to run out of digital tape. So we have about 1 minute left, and we really appreciate all of the stuff that you've been talking about. It shows to me the barbaric side of this entire industry, and how at its roots it is very problematic. But if we could maybe close with two things. The first thing is, I was wondering if, and remember, we have maybe about 45 seconds tops. Can you briefly say what it is that you think, what can people do for Thanksgiving? And also maybe we could close with you telling everybody your website address and things like that. So
sure.
It has to be brief, though.
Okay, I'm hurrying. Okay, first of all, our website address is upc-online.org. It's www.upc-online.org. I have a wonderful cookbook which people can order, has whole Thanksgiving recipes, wild rice and mushroom stuffing, and all kinds of marvelous things. People can create what I call a polyphonic table, where you have a wide variety of things. You might have a tofu turkey, for example, or you can have all kinds of casseroles. Again, my book has all kinds of casseroles and wonderful things. There's so many fake meats now available for people who want fake meats, or you can do wonderful things with pastas. You can do things with shiitake mushrooms that really can be made to taste like have the same consistency as meat. You can freeze tofu. You can unfreeze it. It has a chewy texture. And the thing about tofu is that it takes in any marinade or any sauce that you soak it in, so that it takes on those flavors. And since you can, again, you can make it have that same meat-like texture, you really can do marvelous things.
Okay, Karen, I'm really sorry, but we have to cut you off here because we're going to run out of tape, and then we will get disconnected. So we want to thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I just? Are we off?
We're going to be off any second, so hurry.
Okay, I'd say discover new traditions and pioneer new traditions in the kitchen.
Wonderful.
Don't just switch from beef to chicken. Get the slaughterhouse out of your kitchen.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. We really appreciate it. And
thank you, Bob, and thank you, Jenna.
Yes.
Okay, so that was our interview with Karen Davis, United Poultry Concerns. You should go visit her website at upconline.org. Karen does amazing work with her organization.
Yeah, she's got a lot of great info, a lot of good books you might want to check out. And like she mentioned some of her things about, activist burnout and that kind of thing. So check it out.
Yeah, she's really good. She knows her shit. And we would have let her go longer, but we were running out of mini disc. We only had a few seconds left as it was. So it was tough.
Yeah, so some really good food for thought there. So if you have any comments, please let us know.
It's the thing you got to hear right before Thanksgiving. I mean, what else could you hear?
Yeah, definitely.
It's perfect. So next week we're back with a regular Vegan Freak show. No, I don't think we have any interviews next week, do we?
Yeah, we got some coming up in December, but I don't know if we're going to have any next week.
Yeah, we've got a couple interviews coming up in December. We're trying to sort out different dates with people, but right now, tentatively, it looks like we've got something going with Josh from Herbivore Magazine. We've got
Eric Marcus
coming up in December. We also have Josh Harper from the Shack 7 coming up, I think in December.
Excellent.
We're still sorting out dates, and we've got a whole bunch of things lined up for you. We're ready to deliver all kinds of action-packed vegan freak fun for you. Oh, yeah. We're your vegan freakies. We're on the scene, and we got it going.
Well, once again, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week. Have a good weekend. Have a good holiday if at all possible.
Yeah, and I'm going to go I'm gonna go yell at the dog because he's eating something. I don't know what it is. Can you see what he's
He's
eating?
probably eating a sock.
No, he's eating. It looks like paper. Oh my! I wish the dog would just be good for once. Why is he so bad?
Because he's too smart for his own good.
He is too smart for his own
Because
good.
he
But
knows
anyway.
we're going to go in there and then we're going to pay attention to him.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week. Don't forget, you can visit our website at podcast.veganfreak.com. You can vote for us at Podcast Alley. You can stop by our forums and sign up. We got all kinds of new features on the forums. I'm working my buns off on the forums.
Yeah, including photos now.
You can
for,
upload
for only
photos.
registered members.
Only for registered members. Well, I think, yeah, only registered members. And I don't know, all kinds of things. So, you know, whatever. We better get going before the dog disconnects the mixer.
All right.
All right.
Thanks
see
again.
you next week.
Cooking chickens don't seem right, morning, noon, or late at night. Ain't no chicken ever done no harm to me. So on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve, give those turkeys a reprieve. Ain't no turkey got to die for me. Well, swing to the east and swing to the west. Swing the chicken that you love best. Coming down to the chicken squawk with me. Buckle Nugget looked at me, said NBC's okay with me. We learned how to let our chickens free. We birds of feather, we stick together. We said our chickens free forever, so go ahead and let your chickens be. Lordy Jesus, must be the end. They got us eating our butts and friends and pants bake those little chickadees. Well, swing to the east and swing to the west. We'll swing the chicken that you love best. Coming down to the chicken squawk with me. Well, swing to the east and swing to the west. Swing the chicken that you love best. Coming down to the chicken squawk with me.
I say the smart thing to do is be just plain chicken. Yeah.